Enlightenment and some other questions as posed by Cosmic Zen, aka the Aist. So what is enlightenment? Simply defined, enlightenment is an illumination. Light has been cast upon what was once in the dark. From a Western materialistic standpoint, enlightenment is about the discoveries that are made about what is external. Universes, stars, galaxies, planets, solar systems, elements of life, ecosystems, organisms. All discoveries are knowledge gained from the content of the data being perceived, is the commonly understood definition of enlightenment from the West. Consciousness has an awareness of a perception of an experience. Western enlightenment dealing primarily in what can be discovered from a perception of an experience, with very little attention paid to the awareness of consciousness. By and large, this is mostly written off with mundane explanations. In contrast, enlightenment, from a more Eastern, spiritual sense, are the discoveries and knowledge gained by exploring inward, following the experience of perception of awareness of consciousness back to its source, to consciousness itself. Discoveries made within perceived experiences are only a partial enlightenment. The discoveries of the awareness of consciousness and consciousness itself becoming aware of itself is a full illumination. Following an experience back to its source of consciousness and discovering a wholeness, a oneness with the oneness. To be everywhere at once, while not being associated, identified, or attached to any particular thing. It is the empirical experience of raw awareness, not instinct awareness like that of animals, or self-awareness like that of human beings, but a collective consciousness, a universal mind, a connection to the source of everything. It is pure being, a clarity, an intuitive knowing without any thinking, an outside perspective of duality, the clear seeing of non-duality. It is total awareness and total freedom, not dependent on any worldly detail, not body, brain, organism, condition, system, laws, world, or context. And yet all of these descriptions are still inadequate to explain what enlightenment is. To really know what enlightenment is, one must explore it, which will lead to discoveries about it, which will lead to being it. Which brings us to the next question of how does one know if they are enlightened? This cannot be qualified for us from what we're perceiving as other people. It must be experienced for oneself. The best that others can do is to help guide the way. So if the only way to know enlightenment is to be enlightenment, how would one know if they are really enlightened? When one is truly enlightened, there is no question. If there is still any question about it, enlightenment has not been reached. Which brings us to the next question. How does one know if they are not enlightened? One is not enlightened if they are associated, identified, or attached to anything. And that means anything. Race, sex, age, sexual orientation, species or organism identifications, objects, locations, actions, ideas, beliefs, opinions, judgments, facts, fantasies, morals, scruples, ethics, values, practices, habits, routines, laws, religions, philosophies, and sciences. And if not handled correctly, this could also even include Buddhism, Eastern philosophy, and the science of consciousness. Even the quest for enlightenment itself, right teachings and right practices, and tools of freedom can become chains of slavery if one forms attachments to them. Anything that enables an illusion of separation, compounded by attachment, keeps a point of perception divided, disconnected from oneness and wholeness, thereby sustaining a condition of unenlightenment. Next question. Is it ever okay to impose morality upon another? It is never beneficial to impose anything, morality or otherwise, on anyone. Morality specifically is a subjective distinction, a made-up distinction. Distinctions have been created by points of perception where there are no distinctions. North, south, east, and west are not fundamental truths, but are truths that have been created by points of perception. And people try and do impose distinctions all the time. But ultimately it's not going to be a cure-all. It's not going to fix all points of perception in this condition. As we can see from rampant immorality, the morality that has been imposed has not accomplished what it has set out to do, and it never will, because ultimately people are going to do what they want to do. So something is never really imposed. The best that could be done is strongly suggested, or coercively suggested. The acceptance or the rejection lies within the person being imposed upon. So all distinctions that are imposed will not come to fruition. Force begets resistance, and there's nothing to impose. The best thing that you can do for another person is try to help them help themselves to be free. The best one can do is to offer guidance and assistance to help another explore, question, and observe to find out for themselves. A true master or a true benefactor can only point the way, offer tips and hints, but that's it. Next question. Is there a difference between knowing and believing? If so, what is it? Again, in truth, there is no distinctions between anything. But if you're talking about knowing and believing within the framework of the common agreement node paradigm, a belief is something that one accepts without any empirical knowledge of it, thereby translating into a faith. Knowing is something that one experiences directly, empirically, thereby translating into practical knowledge. For example, two men are sitting inside a room and they hear a loud noise outside. One man goes outside to investigate and sees that a large meteorite has crashed into the hillside. He sees it for himself and therefore knows that it is there. Upon returning inside, he tells the other man about it, who does not go outside to see it for himself, but rather simply believes what the other man has told him. This man is believing that a meteorite has crashed on the hillside without any form of confirmation. If one knows, they have no need for belief. But one who believes is lacking in knowing. Direct empirical experience is the only thing that translates into what could be called true knowledge, true knowing. Next question. Why Why is it so difficult for humans to understand simple reality? Part of the problem is that human beings overcomplicate simple reality unnecessarily. The other problem is that they are looking for answers in all the wrong places. No human being is going to understand reality by seeking an answer in outside materials or by subscribing to fantasy. If we search for an answer to reality by looking outside into the material universe, we are embarking on a never-ending search that will not ever provide any final answers to the ultimate truth of reality. In fact, any answers gained only open a multitude of new questions. Similarly, no answers for reality will be found by having faith in what we're told to believe, or in fantastical stories that have no basis in the realm of empirical experience. To understand all realities equally, points of perception must come to see that a reality is merely a description, like film in a movie projector. The film is passed over a beam of light, the light of consciousness, which projects images onto a screen. Understanding of reality eludes points of perception because they're too busy trying to find answers in the details of what's going on in the movie, totally overlooking the fact that the details and the images on the screen are merely a projection, a description, a strip of film that consciousness is filtering through. Change movie reels, different details, different images, but the answer to reality is not going to be found in those details or those images. Next question. Is it bright in the center of a star? From a spiritual sense, this is basically an irrelevant question. It's like asking if an apple is red. Knowing the answer is not going to facilitate any progress on the spiritual path. There are many mysteries in the universe. Some questions can be answered, some cannot. But any answers obtained only lead to more questions. It is a search without any end. We only have a limited time to investigate our connection to the wholeness of everything. If we wait to investigate this until after all our questions about the universe are answered, death will be upon us. And not only will we not have obtained any final answers about the universe, but our chance for inward exploration will have slipped through our fingers. Next question. What is something you cannot conceive of? The unknowable. We can conceive of what is known. The unknown is something that is not currently conceivable, but is potentially within reach to become known. The unknowable is something that is forever out of the grasp of the known, and is therefore inconceivable. To ask what exactly is unknowable cannot be answered. It cannot be expressed in any way because it is, by its very nature, inconceivable. This is what makes it unknowable and inconceivable. But for an example of such, how and why did energy or consciousness come into being from nothingness? And also the how and why of nothingness itself.